How you doing, everybody? My name is Dr. Nathan Thompson with Exemplify Health Center, your Wellness Way affiliate right here in Yorkville, Illinois. Happy Monday, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed your Easter. Happy Easter. If I didn't get a chance to wish you guys a happy Easter. We had a chance to celebrate yesterday with family. It was awesome. It was relaxing. Had a great time. I hope you also had a great time as well, and also understand the reason behind Easter as well, most importantly. Guys, today I was racking my brain actually yesterday. I was actually asking my wife, I'm like, I cannot think of a topic for tomorrow. So I actually had a thought flash at about 5 o'clock this morning. I thought, I saw an article. I want to actually go over this because I know that people are going to start asking me about this topic. And yes, we are bringing up this topic again. Yes, it may be shadow banned and it might be taken down off the platform. I imagine if we try to put this topic up on YouTube, probably it will get taken down and I'll get another slap on the wrist. However, I think this is important to talk about, and I'm actually going to give you my opinion regarding this, and we're going to go actually through when it comes to FDA authorization that Pfizer is seeking for the booster shot for children age 5 to 11. I'm going to give you my opinion on why it doesn't make sense. I'm actually going to go through the press release and I'm going to show you why it doesn't make sense. I'm going to teach you a little bit about how the immune system works and also why a high antibody count does not necessarily mean immunity, this whole idea behind immunity. Guys, I will tell you, and in fact, go look at some of our previous videos that we've done. Go to Dr. Patrick Flynn and about the wonderful work that he's done with the Wellness Way as well. But I remember hearing Dr. Patrick talk about immunity doesn't exist and gave an example. I said, you know what, that's pretty spot on, is that immunity really doesn't exist within the body. The other thing that doesn't exist is the ability to be able to boost the immune system. And if people are talking about boosting the immune system, then they really don't understand that really all it is about restoring sufficiency to the immune system and about handling the things that can drive the immune system down. But there's really no such thing as boosting the immune system. You can only bring it back to sufficiency. And guys, I'm going to tell you, sufficiency of the immune system is enough to be able to handle any virus, any bacteria for that matter. So let's talk about the FDA authorization that the Pfizer is seeking and why it doesn't make sense. But I'm going to go through their press release. So guys, make sure that you please share this video, especially if they have young kids, but also anybody who has questions regarding this whole narrative that has taken place. And guys, make sure you watch all the way to the end because I'm going to give you a funny story, an interesting story that's going to give you a little bit of inspiration about when people have a different perspective, how people react. You guys have probably maybe given people a different perspective. Heck, you maybe even shared my video and it was met with violent opposition. And I'm going to actually tell you why, okay? Why it was met with such opposition. So let's go over this press release that Pfizer actually did. Now this came from Thursday, April 14th, I believe. Yes, it's the 18th today. It's tax day, so happy tax day to all you wonderful people. Lord knows where all my money is going to. So this is a press release by Pfizer and BioNTech, okay? So Pfizer and BioNTech announced data demonstrating high immune response following a booster dose of their COV, et cetera, jab in children 5 through 11 years of age, okay? Now you look at this and you're like, wow, this is really awesome. Boy, they're giving this to children 5 to 11 years of age. They're having a high immune response. Well, if you start to unpack it, what do they mean by a high immune response? Basically what they're saying is that there is a high antibody titer, okay? Which means when they give this vaccine and then they measure the antibody response, they're seeing within the blood that there is a high level of antibodies to the specific viral fragments from this virus, okay? But the thing is that we have been taught that antibodies confer immunity and it doesn't, okay? So all antibodies actually do is their primary purpose is to, when you have exposure to a specific antigen, antibodies actually have a process known as opsonization, in which they surround let's say a virus, and they make the virus too big to be able to latch on to a receptor to be able to enter into the body, okay? So yes, the first response is opsonization, and then the second response is to tag it for sensitized T cells to be able to start to destroy it, okay? Now, antibodies, like I said, do not confer immunity. And I'll give you a perfect example, guys, because it really isn't about antibodies, and antibodies. And I'm going to show you this in just a second, okay? I'm going to ask some really important questions. So here's what they said. Data were analyzed in the study that wants them to seek authorization from the FDA, and how many children that they studied regarding what they would call a third booster shot. So you get the first one, you get the second one 3 weeks later, and then 6 months later, they get this booster. Now, the reason why they want you to have never-ending boosters is so that they can have you continue to have these booster shots every 6 months, okay? So how many did they study? Well, according to the press release from Pfizer, by the way, you can fact check this because this comes from the Pfizer website on April 14th, 2022. They analyzed data from 140 children, okay? Think about that, 140 children. How many children are there in the United States, 5 to 11, that are going to be recommended this actual vaccine, okay? 140 children, 5 to 11 years of age, received the booster dose approximately 6 months after the second dose of the Pfizer BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine, 10 microgram primary series. Now, antibodies induced by a third dose neutralize the SARS-CoV-2 Omicron variant in this age group, as demonstrated by a 36-fold increase in neutralizing antibody titers compared to levels seen after 2 doses of the Pfizer BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine. So they're saying you have a 36-fold increase in these antibodies. Common person is going to say, wow, that's really good. 36 times the level of antibodies. But yet, when I look at it from a different perspective, you know what I'm saying? Why did the antibody count go down so much within 6 months? Guys, one of the reasons why an antibody count goes down over time is because if you had the same level of circulating antibodies for every single viral infection, bacterial infection, or heck, every single food allergy that took place, your blood would be filled with so much antibody protein that it would not be able to flow and deliver oxygen and nutrients to your tissues. It would be like sludge. So it's a natural response, guys, that antibody counts should go down over time. That is a natural consequence. I'll give you a perfect example because we have tested people who have gotten natural infections, okay? Now listen to this. We've tested people who have gotten COVID-19 naturally the way you're supposed to, which is inhalation and then infection through the lung barriers, or an Omicron typically within the barriers of the throat, and going through the barriers, having a macrophage dendritic cell response with going to an antigen presenting cell, and then having a proper T cell response from this. Meaning a normal infection must go through the barriers and not bypass the barriers, which is what they do when actually you have a vaccine. So you're missing the antigen presenting cell, which is the macrophage, okay? Now, over time, we've measured people who had that natural infection, and they got over it within 6 weeks, and they had a very high antibody count, very high. I've seen it as high as 120. Okay, and it's just going to be depending on how the lab is actually measuring it. Now, I actually took an antibody test, and my levels were at 1, okay? So my levels were at 1, but I never tested myself. I've never had the test for it, but I had some pretty strange symptoms in which I developed like a lung infection, spiked a fever for about 24 hours, lost my taste and smell for a little bit, but basically was over it after about 36 hours, had kind of a lingering cough for about 10 days after that. So when I took my antibody count, mine was at 1, and that's actually supposed to happen. And the reason why is because over time, antibody counts will actually wane. But what's interesting, guys, is that everyone thinks it's all about antibodies. But guys, remember, is that if those T cells have been presented that antigen, what's really amazing with having a natural infection is those CD8 cells will actually reside around the area where there was an infection, which means that you have sensitized T cells sitting around the barriers of the lungs if that's in fact where you got the infection. That's really cool because those sensitized T cells to that specific viral protein will come into action a lot quicker, which is actually one of the reasons why you may get exposure to it, but you may not notice any kind of infectious response to it. So they're saying, well, this is really awesome. There's a 36-fold increase. But guys, anything that enters into the body, and especially bypassing the barriers, will produce an antibody response. Guys, if you get a sliver, for example, you get a sliver and it goes underneath your skin, your immune system is going to start breaking it down. And yes, you will have antibodies to that specific wound. It just is not anything special. But when they're saying, wow, look at this antibody response, my question is, well, no duh, you put anything injected under the surface of the skin, you're going to have an antibody response, but is it conferring that this person has quote unquote immunity? Okay, so here's my question. Does a high antibody count mean immunity? Okay, does it mean immunity? And my opinion is no, it doesn't mean necessarily anything. So how you have a better immune response is actually by having a natural infection. So you have a natural infection in which it enters into the lungs, is then exposed through the barriers. You have a macrophage response, an antigen presenting response to the T cells, then also to the B lymphocytes, which will then produce antibodies, and then also sensitized T cells that know exactly how to be able to look at infected cells that have been infected in order to handle that virus, especially the next time, a whole heck of a lot quicker, okay? So they only talked about antibodies, and in the press release, they talked nothing about having sensitized CD8 cells that are residing at the primary area of infection. Now, one of the things that's really interesting is that, okay, if you have a natural infection, those T cells are then residing and staying there for years, actually, in order to become sensitized when this infection can come back again or you're exposed to it again. But my question is if you're injecting it underneath the skin in the shoulder, the biggest question that I have is then where are those T lymphocytes, those killer T cells, where are they residing, and have they been sensitized? And if they are they actually sensitized in the armpit, where actually this spike protein is taken up within the actual lymph nodes? So they don't answer these questions. All I want them to do is please answer this question, because immunity is much more than just about antibodies. Now, here's what's interesting is I came across a fascinating article from the National Institute of Health, the National Library of Medicine, and what's amazing is how much, guys, you can find on the internet. And yes, just to prove the naysayers wrong, I used Google, and I still was able to find it. So this comes from the National Institute of Health, National Library of Medicine, and it comes from an article called Regional and Mucosal Memory T Cells, okay? And this comes from a peer-reviewed journal of November 26, 2011, which means it's 10 years old. And here's what they said. After infection, okay, now they say infection, not vaccination, infection, most antigen-specific memory T cells reside in non-lymphoid tissues. Tissue-specific programming during priming leads to directed migration of T cells to the appropriate tissue, which promotes the development of tissue-resident memory in organs such as intestinal mucosa and in the skin, okay? Memory T cells that reside at these surfaces provide a first line of defense against subsequent infection, okay? That is your primary level of defense against a subsequent infection. They said nothing actually about antibodies, and what they're talking about is memory T cells. So the question is show me the research and show me the data beyond an antibody titer to see if, in fact, there is actually memory T cells, and those memory T cells are actually sitting at the lung lining, around the lung barrier, the lung epithelium, and not just randomly within the body. Okay? So number 2, here's what they also said. Memory T cells reside in these tissues, which consist mainly of the intestines, the lungs, the skin, and the genital surfaces. These tissues have a vast surface area and therefore contain most of the body's memory T cells. So where are those memory T cells living? They're living within the barriers. They're not living in the blood. They're not living in the lymph tissue. Most of them are actually living underneath the skin, underneath within the lungs, within the intestines, anywhere where you could have entry of a virus or a bacteria from the internal environment, from the external environment into the internal environment. What a wonderful design, guys, is that is where these soldiers are living in order to handle an infection before it becomes systemic. Now remember this, the people who are having the worst day whatsoever with any kind of virus or any kind of bacteria or anything that could cause an infection are those who have a poor immune system response. And how do you know? You can actually measure it, guys. You can measure it. You can measure it with 100% certainty every single type of immune cell, and I guarantee you 99.9% of you have never gotten your immune system tested the way that we test at our office and within the Wellness Way, and how we teach how the immune system actually works, okay? So here's my second question. If memory T cells are the first line of defense to reinfection, where did they reside when the antigen is injected? That's something that I want to know, and I'd like Pfizer to actually answer that question, because if it's not going through the lung barriers and it's being injected and taken up within the lymph nodes, within the shoulder or underneath the armpit, then where are those sensitized T cells? If they are in fact sensitized, where are they residing? There's no reason for them that they would have a reason to reside within the lung barriers, because that's not where the infection was introduced or the antigen was introduced. So where are they sitting? Are they only offering a line of protection? Meaning like maybe I'm going to get COVID underneath my armpit within those lymph nodes? That's not going to happen, because reintroduction of that antigen naturally is going to happen within the nose, the mucous membranes, in the throat, and within the lungs. You're not going to have those sensitized T cells that are actually sitting there. All you're going to have is a bunch of random antibodies that are floating around that are quickly going to go down, because over time, antibody levels will go down unless you have a subsequent re-exposure, and the best re-exposure is actually naturally. But here's what they're actually moving towards. They're moving towards having a booster shot every 6 months. Guys, and I will say it time and time again, is that having a healthy immune system and getting an infection naturally is the way that it was intended. And I know what some people are going to say is they're going to say, well, my immune system isn't strong enough. My grandma's immune system isn't strong enough. I'm on immunosuppressants and it's not strong enough. I've had cancer and it's not strong enough. Well, my opinion is this. Figure out why you got those things and then start working on your health to restore the body's immune system. I will say time and time again, for one thing, I am not going to light my kids on fire to keep you warm. Your health is not my responsibility. I am not going to potentially, because I'm going to go over the warning signs that they have within this article, the warning signs of why I would never, ever give it to my children. And number 2, I wouldn't give it to my children, not only for the side effects, but because it doesn't make physiological sense. And I will never do something that goes against the design of the body, because God's the creator, not man. A man has never outperformed the original creation of God. That's just my opinion. And the thing is I have 3 kids, 15, 13, and 11, and they've never been on an antibiotic. They've never had a vaccine. They have never been on a drug whatsoever, and I do not apologize for that, and I do not care if we are the weird kids on the block. because the kids are saying you're so weird are on their asthma medication. They have an EpiPen because they have so many food allergies, and they're probably on an antidepressant as well. Now, that's not to say that those kids don't have value, they don't have worth, but the reality is that if a sick person's saying that I'm weird and I'm not on any medications, then hallelujah, I hope that I'm weird, okay? Because being normal in today's society would mean that I would have gone around wearing a mask, being scared of a virus, that I would have just said yes to everything that took place. And guys, all of the lockdowns, the social distancing and things like that, I have another article that shows that overdose in drug use in kids skyrocketed over the last 2 years. What on earth did we do to our kids in the name of safety and protection? And you know who's responsible for it? The responsibility comes from the people who never took care of their health, and they wanted the children to protect them. And meanwhile, what we did is we had an epidemic of mental health issues in our kids because we were lighting them on fire to try to keep ourselves warm. And it doesn't make sense. And we should be ashamed of ourselves from doing this for our children. So here's the other thing that I want to talk about too. Because why such a strong immune system response in children? Okay. Now, I've showed you guys research. We've talked about this at our Make Immune Systems webinar and talk that we did a couple of times within our office. But the strength of this antibody response is 100% dependent, not on the vaccine, it's dependent on how many B lymphocytes you have, okay? So I want you to think about this. There are certain type of white blood cells, the B lymphocytes. They're the ones that make antibodies. So if you don't have B lymphocytes, for whatever reason, I'm going to show you an example here, then how on earth are you going to stimulate making antibodies if you don't have the B lymphocytes? See, the thing is that, yes, even vaccines are dependent on you having a sufficient level of immune cells. But I want you to think about this. If you have a sufficient level of immune cells in order to make antibodies from a vaccine, then you should have a sufficient level of immune cells to be able to handle any virus in the first place. And at that point, it's a moot point to give a child a vaccine from it. So I want you to think about it, is the people that they're doing a third booster, fourth booster, fifth booster, and are like, oh my gosh, look at this, it's not working. We must give more of these boosters. These are the people who are immunocompromised in the first place. I want to give you an example because this is the expanded immune panel that we do. I know that you're going to ask for what it is. It's CBC with differential, and also measuring CD8, CD4, natural killer cells, and then looking at B lymphocytes, looking at total white blood cells. So we're looking at, and also what are known as CD19 cells, B lymphocytes. So you can run this panel, ask your doctor for it if they're willing to do it. Great, they may charge you $5,000 for it. But we ran this on a woman who had actually had cancer, okay? Now, if you look at this, you can see her CD4 cells are low, CD19 cells, low white blood cells, high eosinophil percentage, which that's not very good because that can signify that there's something really irritating the immune system. A lot of times it's continued cancer growth. Looking at low granulocytes and low vitamin D. So what did they have? They were low in every single immune system cell, including the B lymphocytes, which are what are making antibodies. And so she had said, yes, my doctor talked me into getting the COVID-19 vaccine and the booster. She said, and I tested for antibodies to COVID-19, and even after I got the booster, they were non-detectable. And I said, well, that goes to show you that you can't create something from nothing. So here's what they're doing to kids, is they're saying, look at this antibody response, and I'm saying, well, no duh, because 99% of kids, as long as they aren't on an immunosuppressant, as long as they're not on some kind of steroid medication, as long as they're not at that point a type 2 diabetic, or as long as they haven't been undergoing cancer treatment, which is going to kill off the immune system, then they're going to have sufficiency of the immune system, and of course they're going to create an antibody response. But you know what? Is like if they got a natural infection, it would be a 2 to 3 day cold. And they've seen that clinically time and time again. So my question is is why not let them be able to handle a 2 to 3 day cold that's going to confer a better immune response, that's going to have them have those sensitized memory T cells sitting around the barriers, that's going to make them stronger for any kind of subsequent infection, and it's going to last a lot longer as well than having to give some kind of booster shot every 6 months. So you see what I mean by this, is that if you have sufficient immune cells, then you don't need a vaccine for it. And if you don't have sufficient immune system cells, then the vaccine isn't going to work in the first place, and you need to figure out why you're immunocompromised. Now, you may know why you're immunocompromised. Well, because I'm on this medication. Well, figure out why you're on that medication and work much deeper as far as finding the actual cause. So just like I said, generally speaking, so I'm talking in generalities here, because someone's going to do, well, what about this, okay? Generally speaking, children with normal immune systems that can produce antibodies to a vaccine will also, guys, be able to overcome any virus, okay? The viruses in your body don't have a special brain. They're foreign proteins that demand you have an immune response to it. That's the job of the immune system, is to be handling proteins that don't belong within the body. This includes the viruses, includes the bacteria, and yes, this also includes proteins that come from food, either IgG or IgE food allergies, okay? Now, if you want to even get me started about IgE food allergies, holy cow, because they estimate about 15% of kids have an IgE food allergy, and people are like, why on earth do so many kids now have all of these allergies to these specific proteins? And you know what the response of the government is? We need more funding for the treatment of IgE food allergies versus saying we need more funding to find the cause of these IgE food allergies. No one is talking about causes, and they're talking about funding in order to continue to propagate this absolute madness. So generally speaking as well, a person with a low immune cells, like I showed you in this lab, will not produce antibodies from a vaccine and will also get sick from any virus, which is why they have actually said maybe we need to try a third booster, a fourth, or a fifth. And guys, it's like saying the floggings are going to continue until morale improves. How on earth can you create something from nothing? You can't. You can't produce antibodies when you don't have sufficient white blood cells as well. So the big picture about this, guys, is this, is that it's not about a vaccine. It's about the health of your immune system, and each one of us is responsible for the health of your immune system. So, do you know what builds an immune response, or do you know what can kill off an immune response? And we could talk about that for an hour to 2 hours, talking about the role of sugar, the role of insulin, the role of how actually sugar will cause increased oxidative stress, how it will kill off neutrophils, things like that, the role of the stress response and how it lowers the immune response. The role of corticosteroids and how it will long-term suppress the immune response, and all of those things leading to a low immune response over time. Guys, this is one of the reasons why there is such a high incidence of cancer, because yes, cancer is actually either killed off or it's allowed to continue based on the number of immune cells that you have within your body, particularly natural killer cells and your CD8 cells, which are responsible for killing off viruses, and they're also known as tumor suppressing cells. So we want to blame our hormones, we want to blame our genes, we want to blame bad luck. But the reality is that we refuse to look ourselves in the mirror and say, you know what, maybe I've done something to cause it. I don't know what I've done, but I'm willing to learn so that I can not only help to fight this, but more importantly, help this from never coming back in the first place, okay? So this is actually what they said. This comes from Helio in the primary care division of their website. Pfizer BioNTech seeks FDA authorization of COVID-19 booster for children. What I want you guys to pay attention to is they're not looking for FDA approval, they're looking for FDA authorization. There's a difference between the two. FDA approval is different than FDA authorization. Authorization means that as long as they continue to put ourselves in a state of emergency COVID-19 authorization, then the FDA says we can authorize this for as long as possible. But when this goes down, you cannot have any of these vaccines. You can't mandate it. You can't recommend it. You can't say, hey, you need this in order for your preschool shots at different times of your schooling. We can't do that. It must be at that point FDA authorized or FDA approved. So they're not actually seeking FDA approval. They're actually asking for FDA emergency use authorization, in which there's a difference between the two. Okay, there is a big difference between the two. Okay, now, so I went ahead and I kept going down in this press release, and here's what I found. Okay, so important safety information. Okay, and let me see. I think I might have had. I didn't. Okay, but basically, it's right underneath here, okay? And let me explain this, because people say, well, it already has been approved by the FDA. There's two different kinds manufactured by Pfizer. One is the Cormity. I might have said that wrong. That's not even being used yet in the United States. It's in Europe. That has been approved. But the current one that's being used has only been granted emergency use authorization. Okay, so the one that when they say it's been approved by the FDA, that's the one that they're not even using in the United States as of yet. And I imagine they're probably not using it because they have to go through lots and lots and lots of these different vaccines before they actually used up the ones that they actually produced. So when they say that it has been approved, be very careful, and you have to ask which one is it that the doctor might be recommending for your 5 to 11-year-old, okay? So, but here's what's interesting, guys, because at the end, here's what they actually said. They said, okay, by the way, at the very end, when you don't want to read this anymore, is important safety information. All right, well, I think they should probably have this first. So tell your vaccination provider about all of your medical conditions, including if you have any allergies. Now, how many kids today have allergies? My goodness. We're talking about seasonal allergies. We're talking about food allergies. We're talking about, medication allergies. And today it's probably more than half, more than 50%. Tell your provider if you have had myocarditis. This is a head scratcher right here, because there's not too many kids that have had myocarditis or inflammation of the heart muscle, or pericarditis, inflammation of the lining of the outside of the heart. Now, this is what's interesting though, is that you have seen the number one side effect is actually myocarditis, pericarditis in boys, especially under, I think, 25 years of age. So basically what they're having as a side effect that they have admitted, and they said, yeah, but it's so rare. I'm like, tell that to the mother and to the father whose child is in the hospital, how rare it is. And so they're saying, well, if you've had it in the past, then you make sure you tell someone as well. But, it only takes one time. I don't know many kids who have had myocarditis 5 to 11 years of age, and we're starting to normalize it now when it shouldn't be, having inflammation of the heart or inflammation of the lining of the heart, outside of the heart. Or tell them if you are immunocompromised or on a medicine that affects your immune system. So let me ask you a question. Prior to the doctor now wanting to recommend this, are they saying, hey, before we give this to your child, let's go ahead and let's do an immune panel. Let's do a CBC with differential. Let's check your CD4 cells, CD8 cells, CD19 cells, and natural killer cells. Let's test this to see maybe if you can even have an antibody response to this. Or are you guys on any medication that can affect your immune system, which could be any kind of steroid that is going to lower the immune response and start to kill off the immune cells? So this could be different types of autoimmunity medication. Heck, this can be inhaled corticosteroids that they give for asthma as well. So they say the provider should ask you, but I don't know, guys, necessarily how many times this is actually happening. So guys, that's my opinion. You're welcome to disagree, which is fine, but tell me why you disagree. I have a funny story I have to show you, okay? So if you guys have ever been on TikTok, okay, I actually just avoided being on it for a long time, and finally I said, you know what, let's see if we can reach a different audience that might be on TikTok. So I started to do some short videos, mainly like 60 seconds to 2 minutes long. And we wanted to just especially like even what I went over today, just some really quick videos that you can get kind of what I went over in a shorter format. And so I started uploading those to TikTok and then, to Instagram. So if you guys don't follow me, you can go to TikTok at Dr. Nathan Thompson. You can go to Instagram, Dr. Nathan Thompson. I post a little bit more about just my everyday life. I think maybe you might get to know me a little bit better from there. Maybe you won't like me, maybe you will. Either way, it doesn't matter. So I woke up and looked at one of the videos, and it was this one right here. So I woke up, it was a Saturday morning, and I had literally like 400 comments on one video. And I looked at it, and it went from 400 to 80,000 overnight. And then I thought, oh man, here we go again. I just try to put out like information that helps people. If they share it, great. If they don't, that's okay. But then last time I screenshot, I think it's now at almost 400,000 views. But the thing was the number of comments, and 90% were really encouraging, or maybe they had a question, but my goodness, 10% of people, man, they were vicious. Now, good thing I've been through it before, so I can handle it, and I can handle the darts, I can handle the arrows, I can handle the mean comments and things like that. But I got to thinking that if you want to know a person's true character, give them a perspective that they disagree with, and that they can be able to come after you under a keyboard or behind a keyboard or behind the anonymity of a profile, and not actually tell it to you into your face. And so really, if you want to know really truly who a person is, give them a keyboard and give them a perspective that they might not disagree with. Because one of the biggest things that I found is that no one attacked what I said, but they attacked what I was, or my profession, or that I wasn't a qualified cardiologist. Guys, I'm going to tell you something. The truth is the truth is the truth. If it's true, it doesn't matter who's saying it. So you're welcome to disagree, but attack the argument and stop attacking the person. The reason why is this, okay? Skeptics attack the argument. If you're skeptical, that's fine. Attack the argument. Tell me why you disagree with the argument. But this is tough. Bigots, they attack the messenger. Wow, are you saying that there are people who are bigots? Yes, bigotry is not only just due to race, it's not just gender, but it also has to do against a profession. And so if you have a skewed view just based on someone's profession, then yes, you are a bigot. And you should work on yourself. And you should also work on your courage to start attacking the actual argument and not attacking the person. See, lazy people attack the messenger. People who don't want to think attack the messenger. Children attack the messenger. And one of the things that I've realized with social media is that there's a lot of adults who haven't grown up being past 10 years of age mentally. So there's always one thing that you guys can always do, is you can always be kind. And if something upsets you emotionally, then figure out why it upsets you emotionally, and then figure out the deeper reasons why you're having an emotional response to it. Skeptics attack the argument, but bigots, they attack the messenger. And yes, there are many forms of bigotry, and don't be that person, okay? So guys, if you enjoyed this, please share this video. Please share with others a different perspective. Please keep sharing. I always appreciate when you guys share. Oh man. And I know that I can't respond to every single comment. I can't respond to every single message. I'm still in practice about 60 hours a week. So it is very hard. We have some people that we've hired to try to respond as best as possible, to try to point people in the right direction. We try to do as best as we can. And if we can't, we apologize. We're always trying to do our best. But guys, if you're from the Chicagoland area, our next approach to inflammation is coming up pretty quick. It is going to be 3 weeks from tomorrow. I don't even know the date. I believe it's May 7th, which is a Tuesday, 6:15. And the reason why we always start with inflammation first, before talking about the immune system, hormones, and everything like that, is because everything first starts from inflammation. Inflammation is the spark that will start every single chronic disease out there. So really, when you talk about your hormones, it begins with inflammation. You talk about gastrointestinal issues, it begins with inflammation. You talk about cardiovascular issues and heart disease, it's inflammation. Cancer, it's inflammation. Thyroid issues, it's inflammation. Weight loss resistance, it's inflammation. Everything first and foremost starts with inflammation, and if you do not handle inflammation, it is no different than a scab on your knee that never heals. It will never heal unless you first stop inflaming it. You have to first stop scratching the scab, because then and only then can it start to heal, start to rebuild, and start to repair. And once you guys understand that perspective, then you will understand that healing is possible. And don't let anyone ever tell you that healing is not possible, that there is no cure, that there is no other way that you can do it besides being on drugs and being on medications for the rest of your life. And yes, there's a time when you need to be on them in order to put the fire out. But guys, if you've been on the same medication for the last 45 years and a doctor hasn't actually asked you about changing your lifestyle, then it's time to find a new doctor and it's time to find a new approach. And that's the approach that we talk about at our inflammation talk, May 7th, I believe, which is Tuesday at 6:15. All you got to do is go to the top of the page and register for it, and to get a different perspective when it comes to our approach, when it comes to helping a person be able to heal and start to become empowered to start taking control of their health. And guys, if you like this video, again, please share, and I appreciate everything that you guys have done. I'll be jumping on a little bit later, and I hope you guys have a great week. Make it a great week. Guys, I'll also say this: stop looking ahead to better days and start enjoying today. So many people say, when this happens, I'll start enjoying life. Enjoy life today, because we're not promised tomorrow. So I love every single one of you. Thank you guys very much for always listening. I'm humbled. And as always, I hope you guys have a great night, and we'll talk to you guys very soon. Bye-bye.